Yo, it's another Boss Mule Showcase video. This time, it's the Shade. As you can tell from this video, yes, this is a hyperburn character that I decided, and reason being was for that 1% extra crit damage for my Legion. And if it's going to be at level 250, I might as well just make it as a Boss Mule too. So before making this, I prepared 3 to 6 months in advance before the Savior update was live, so it definitely made the experience more bearable for training and bossing, but if I went straight into it without any preparation, I know it wouldn't be just as good. So far, my opinion towards this class is neutral. Shade is quite a simple class to play and balanced in their performance in many fields of gameplay, with only a few skill inputs, and Maple Warrior being their only active buff other than decent skills. I found Shade to be very relaxing and easy to understand, even in the perspective of a newer player. Also, in my opinion, having one of the best class storylines in the game. I do like tragic stories, and Shade for real gave me a quite emotional feeling when reading through it. So I highly recommend giving the Shade storyline a read for anyone that's interested. And now for my experience. So far with bossing as a Shade up to Lotus and Damien, I'll say it's good, but not very good, so kind of in between. I do like how easy it is and doesn't require a lot of inputs to use when hitting the bosses normally, since Spirit Claw is pretty much all you use to dwindle the boss's HP, especially when it does have quite a lot of lines being dealt. It's just that each line of damage is not a lot, so it kind of makes up for the number of lines. Also having Spirit Bond Max, which is the upgraded version of the hyper skill that you get at level 200, and finishing the corresponding quests for it. It gives you really good stats and a summon to help you out, and while it starts off at 30 seconds, if you continuously hit the boss or any mob, there is a chance to drop these pink liver, which increases the duration of the skill up to 2 minutes. However, the drop rate for these are quite low, and it's better to use Spirit Frenzy and Smashing Multi-Punch to keep the duration up, as the drop for these pink liver are dependent on how much times the mob is hit. Shade also has a debuff skill that increases their final damage by 10%. Bursting as a Shade, on the other hand, is insanely strong and an entire game changer, because once you pop that Spirit Flow, the next time you use Spirit Frenzy, it gets a massive 550% final damage increase. You would know, as the color of the Spirit Frenzy icon would change to pink. Also periodically have spirits summon themselves to attack, which would improve Shade's DPM during the duration. It also resets Shade's skill cooldown, allowing you to bind again the next time, or have bind ready when you want to get ready to burst. Another thing is that Shade has the skill called Soul Splitter, which drastically improves the burst damage from Shade. And this skill basically makes another clone of the boss that shares the same HP, and allows you to deal damage to it. It's essentially dealing burst damage to two bosses, but not like a 1-to-1 HP ratio, because the clone takes reduced damage. But if it was 1-to-1 HP ratio, that would have been way too overpowered. However, the utilities and survivabilities for Shade is where they shine the most. Shade has a debuff shield that can block debuffs 3 times. Great to use against bosses that inflicts the annoying debuffs like Pierre with the red or blue hats, Damien's hand bind and his button mashing bind, Lotus or Magnus falling debris, and many more. Just have to get the timing correct with the incoming debuffs, which shouldn't be so hard to do, as it does last 30 seconds with a cooldown of 60 seconds. Similar to Kana's Haku buff, using Spirit Bond Max will cast it automatically if not already active. Also, Shades could bind 2 times by using it by itself and then using Spirit Flow to reset the cooldown so that Shade could use it again. I personally do this for bosses that has 2 phases and move to different rooms like Lotus or Damien. While it does have a very long cooldown, using Spirit Flow essentially makes it a 2-minute cooldown. Shade has a teleport and a backdash. However, unlike a normal teleport, Shade's teleport could only teleport towards a nearby monster and has a end lag animation. If there are no monsters nearby, then it could be used like a normal teleport, but then it'll still have the end lag animation. The backdash for a Shade is quite a long distance and could be used to get up to platforms a little higher than your character after a flash jump, as it does sort of magnets towards a platform. Also, it could be used to cancel attack animations, though I rarely use this tech when bossing and probably only use it to avoid attacks and travel a little bit faster. Also, Shade has a 8-second iframe with a 2-minute cooldown, and a second life revive skill if taking fatal damage with a 30-minute cooldown if used. And unlike a Nightwalker or Phantom, this skill is a passive, so you don't have to worry about forgetting to toggle it before entering any fight. And Shade has a debuff skill to lifesteal that basically heals them to full HP, but only for a duration of 15 seconds and with a 60-second cooldown. The Shade's Link skill is also kind of an okay survivability, as it's always active, but the 10% chance is pretty low, so do consider yourself lucky if you're able to have this chance happen. Another thing is that Shade has pretty good party utilities, like Soul Splitter being the main thing for party play, as other party members could also attack the clone. And even if Soul Splitter doesn't split a boss, it will still apply a 20% final damage taken debuff to the boss. Then they have a weakened debuff, which also adds another 20% taken debuff to any boss. and Spirit Gate, which adds 10% more crit damage taken. Also adds 80% more crit rate, so great with archer classes. However, Spirit Gate is a debuff skill that needs 5 stacks in order to take the full effect, and the 80% crit rate is not visible in the stat window as it's a debuff applied to the boss when attacking it. So Shade is a pretty good support in party play, though only during burst. Training, however, with Shade is not the greatest. I can say that Shade's training was easy and simple. It's just not very appealing and crazy good like most classes in the game, as Bomb Punch is pretty much all you use while moving in a circle rotation around the map and hopefully hitting at least 2 platforms. The toggle skill, Fox Spears, that pops up from time to time does help kind of a little with training, but since it does very little damage, it's not really that significant to the experience. Spirit Bond Max also doesn't really help you that much in training, as it does sometimes pop attacks here and there. It does get pretty tedious to pick up the liver if you want to keep up the duration of the skill. Using Spirit Flow to train does make it a lot better for only a short duration. It will kind of suck once it goes away. It's great that Bomb Punch did get buffed in Savior and in a few other patches back, with a huge damage to normal monsters and a range increase, so it surely does make the training experience better and for Shade players that struggle to kill mobs using Bomb Punch. So training with a Shade is easy and simple to do. It's just that I wouldn't expect any full map clearing for most maps in the game. Now to the things I dislike about Shade is the DPM during off burst is really bad. The number of lines from Spirit Claw is a lot for sure, but the damage that comes from it is really low. I can agree that the 5th job skill, True Spirit Claw, makes up for it, but even then I would sometimes miss the attack using it, though that's probably just a skill issue. Also, collecting liver that drops from Spirit Bomb Max to keep up the duration gets very annoying to do during bossing and training, and would have been even worse if a player doesn't have a pet that could loot for them. This could be solved entirely with a vac pet, but I don't think that's a good solution for anyone that wants to play Shade optimally. I couldn't keep up the full duration when moving on from bosses to bosses since the fight was already done too quick. Spirit Bomb Max seems to only do well for longer fights, as it should be expected to always be in full duration, but with very bad RNG I could even get very little amounts from using Spirit Frenzy and smashing multi-punch sometimes. I would have liked it if the liver could be collected from just touching it or have a longer starting duration, because 30 seconds is quite short. Another thing is that Shade has too much useless boost nodes, so getting the boost nodes will take a lot of node stones. Like the Blade Imp skills not being in one boost node despite doing the same thing but with different direction, and the second life skill being part of the boost nodes is for sure very useless. It just sucks entirely. So all in all, Shade as a boss mute works just fine, even if it's just working towards that extra 1% crit damage legion at level 250, though totally optional as it may not be for a lot of people with the way how Shade gameplay really is. DPM is not good, bursting is very good, utility and survivability is insanely good and absolutely where they shine. Mobility is not bad, party support is unique and pretty decent at it too. Training is not the greatest, but it's very simple. Difficulty in playing Shade is easy, and funding one is average in gear, but the node stones are going to be needing a hefty amount. And yeah, that pretty much concludes my boss mute showcase of Shade and some analysis on the experience I had. I will continue using this as a boss mute since I've already funded it to the point where I can easily clear most of the bosses every week, and possibly get some arcane gear on the side by doing a few trades until the 5% HP carry nerf comes in. Yeah, kind of unfortunate that's gonna happen, but what can I do? If you want to see the gear I have on the Shade, feel free to keep watching to the next portion of the video. And yeah, thanks for watching. Alright, so we're gonna get to the gear portion of the boss mute showcase video. I'm not gonna keep this for too long since I might just breeze this really quick, but because it's already getting pretty long. And yeah, I'll just quickly go over what I have on the gear. Feel free to pause it real quick if you want to see what potentials or what stats that I have on it. It should be pretty minimum since all potentials are at least like 80%. That's what I usually keep it at. And for superiors though, you could probably use reinforcement instead, since they do just as fine. Barrier Heart is pretty much optional since I got it from the event, and 4 bill is going to be a lot for a lot of people, so you don't really need it. You know, if you want to do what I used previously before I got the arcane gear, this was my weapon before I used it, before I used my arcane. And I will be planning to swap this out with like synergy rings. I did do some trades with a few friends of mine. We'll be using this until I get a black meat mark. This will be replaced. I do have all my decents at level 1. Freud's Wisdom is pretty much optional, but you don't really need this. Fox Spears, all the boost notes are at least level 40 except for Spirit Frenzy, because I have 3 boost notes of this. You see right here, yeah. Three of them over here. Going down. Yeah, if you're gonna make a boss meal for Spirit Shade, you should max this one out first. Spirit Flow. And also get loaded dice, because Shade also get access to loaded dice, which is really good. Alright, and then to how much Arcana have? 770. This is usually the actually this is from the event too. But usually I'll get like around 700. I'll stop right there. Since I think that's like a good stopping point for me. And we'll end up with around 24k stat. Oh yeah, also if I were to use Maple Warrior, then it's 25k stat. And then there's the hyper stats. Standard stuff that I use. This is what I use for experience for when I'm farming. And to link skills. This is for my bossing. And this is what I use for training. And then we'll go on to Legion. This is the usual Legion that I use. I'm at 9k stat, but then usually 8k would be able to help you unlock everything, or like get a good portion amount. Actually, no, 6k is where you unlock everything. But yeah, this is what I go for. Usually crit damage is priority, and then ignore defense, and then boss damage. Then crit rates last. This is what I use for training. And yeah, that's pretty much what I think I have. Yeah, that should be about it. So yeah, thanks for watching.